Hey everyone, Producer Dave here. Make sure you check out our new show called How the Tech Are You? As you might have guessed, it's a show about technology. I talk a little bit about content creation using Linux. Matt talks about some programming stuff I don't understand and also some tech news stuff that I do understand. And HK talks about some system admin stuff that I do understand and some software engineering stuff that I don't understand. You can find How the Tech Are You on your favorite podcast app, or you can also grab it on YouTube or Odyssey.
At some point, we are going to have to do a whole show about how good this show sounds.
All right, everybody, welcome to Downballot. We do this show live every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Pacific right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. I'm Producer Dave. You can find me on Grindr.
And this is the Councilman. You can find me at THE_Councilman on Twitter or anywhere on the Echoplex Media contact page. I'm sure I'm up there. And please subscribe to all of our subscription eligible materials, please download the podcast of Downballot whenever you have a chance on your favorite podcatcher, and absolutely tell your friends, and no matter where they live. We do cover mostly local news from Santa Clara County and San Jose and the South Bay area here, and we tend to get around to San Francisco and other environs in the Bay Area. But really, we found over the years, producer Dave and I, that all local news is local to you and local to someone. So if there's local derp out there in your neck of the woods, send it our way. We'd be happy to cover it. And if anything we're covering here strikes your fancy, please let your friends know about it. And don't be afraid to drop us a few shill bucks. Get us a subscription on Twitch. Go over to Patreon and drop us a few bucks every month. It's really helpful to keep all this wonderful programming that Echoplex Media puts out there together. So what's on the docket for local love afterwards tonight, Producer Dave, after we're wrapped up with the Down Ballot?
Tonight, actually, we're taking a bit of a break, going to run a little bit of a best of. We interviewed Dan from the Art Boutique about a year ago, and we're going to go ahead and rerun that for everybody and put that back out on the podcast feed this week. And then afterward, me and Chip will probably do a little bit of post game, maybe have a little open panel action, see if any of the regulars want to come on and say hi.
Boo. Nice. Dan Votto, always a good get, always a good interview, good conversation, great venue. Please frequent Art Boutique whenever you can for the free entertainment as well as the paid gigs, because we got to support our local artists. Dan has he prides himself on having a great beer selection and a fabulous venue with really kick-ass live music. All of our friends play there. It's fabulous, and it's really eclectic. There's a comic book store in front. They even have an art exhibit up there now. So please check it out. It's on Race Street, just near the Alameda in San Jose. And
just real quick before we get started, tonight's the first night actually with our new overlay for Twitch and OBS. It's I guess better. You are in a much higher resolution than you usually are. That's all well and good until your internet connection gives out, I suppose, and then we'll see how it performs under those circumstances. But yeah, I took most of yesterday during the Media Winches show, Meltdown Monday, to modify an existing overlay that we were using for the tech show, because I kind of like the way that it looked. There's just a kind of a lot less going on, and so but it's it's actually a little tougher on the computer here, because everything's a little more pushing a little more pixels for each of the people on the screen. But I think chat seems to think it looks good, and if you're watching this on video, you'll surely notice the difference. And we'll probably be moving to this overlay or one real similar to it for the other shows. Probably not tomorrow, maybe by Thursday, definitely by Catterday, though.
Nice. And if you're brand new to the show, listener, viewer, you have no idea what we're talking about, and it looks fucking fabulous. So we hope you enjoy the show.
Yeah. So what do we got leading off?
San Jose Police, while we tend to begrudge them on this particular program, they came up with a pretty good score this past week and seem to have thwarted a one-man potential crime spree.
We are tracking a major firearms bust at the home of a murder suspect in San Jose. Police say they recovered more than 65 guns from this man, 38-year-old Vu Tai. 25 of the firearms were illegal assault weapons. 2 were privately made and 2 more were stolen guns. Police also seized many high-capacity magazines and thousands of rounds of ammunition.
That amount of rifles, that amount of ammunition, specifically the ones who are illegal to possess, the illegally manufactured guns, the stolen firearms, is absolutely a red flag to any law enforcement officer in the state of California. Taking those guns off the streets is most certainly going to lead to saving lives.
Tai faces illegal firearms charges. He is also a suspect in the shooting death of a man, which happened on Saturday in South San Jose. Tai remains in police custody.
Way to bury the lead that the guy's a shooting suspect. Just put it at the end.
Yeah, right. Well, they start off with this sort of murder suspect moniker, but then they go right into the guns because it's sexy. And good Lord, that was a pretty decent cachet for one person. Don't know what you need with all that, except unless you're hunting some really big deer. But anyway, yeah, they definitely buried the lead there. So I'm curious to see, how does this play in? How does one thing play into the other thing, right? Was he planning to kill this person with 65 different guns, or was he planning some sort of larger murder, death, kill kind of rampage? Either way, good that they came across this cachet and found it before he was able to do more damage. But I don't know, Producer Dave, just goes to show you what you never know what's lurking in your next door neighbor's apartment.
Yeah, you just don't. It's hard to, I don't know. It's hard to get too. hard to get too riled up about it, I guess, because what are you going to do? You going to go search your neighbor's house? Like, what do you do about this? You can't really. And it's sort of that if it bleeds, it leads shit that the news does.
Do you ever suspect anyone in your building or any apartments you've lived in before who, of some nefarious deeds, but didn't want to necessarily go all burbs on them and prove it?
I lived in a complex before this one that had over 2,000 units, so I have to assume somebody there was hiding.
Law of averages.
Not 2,000. Yeah. I'm sorry, over 200 units. 2,000 units. What kind of fucking...
law of averages, you got to suspect. 2,000 units, you're looking at a pretty big high rise. But yeah, law of averages, you have to suspect someone's doing something, right? Especially this day and age when it's so easy to do things. Anyway, good on you, SJPD, for making the bust. Although, if this person wasn't a murder suspect, I guess we might not have found the cache to begin with. So, but there was another case earlier or a couple weeks ago where they got ahead of a potential mass shooting and got a guy based on red flag laws, wouldn't you know? So those things do actually work occasionally. Heads up, Congress. But that's leading off. So stay safe out there. And we're going to get to a little more about staying safe in a second. But first, Producer Dave, shall we move to winners and losers?
Winners and losers is our favorite segment here because there are no winners. And if there is a winner, it's just not the one you were rooting for. It's the one you were the least rooting for. Otherwise, we wouldn't put it in winners and losers because we only do one feel-good story a week, and it's usually about a pupper or some shit.
Well, we're going to start off with a bunch of losers, but it ends up with a winner. So, at least as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, so the Proud Boys have come to the Bay Area apparently, and they're not really digging on children's story time.
Well, what's really interesting here is that there's this account called Libs of TikTok that is this huge account on Twitter that basically targets harassment towards a lot of queer people, people of color. Teachers who the teachers are all grooming everybody. And they promoted this drag queen story hour on their Twitter account. So that's probably one of the reasons the Proud Boys showed up. Like we keep saying, everything we talk about always ends up coming together in it's all the same story every time, right?
Right. And how often do we find, and this is something I think you found in really starting the Echoplex network, right? And particularly on the Sunday show, digging into the conspiracy theories. It's not until these things ever there's quacks out there. There are conspiracy theorists. There are individuals out there who think whatever they're going to think, right, and have all sorts of stories to tell. But it doesn't get to this point until some sort of inflection. Someone promotes it. Someone uses a platform that is at least not necessarily legitimate or good, but a platform to ramp things up and to promote it beyond just their own little brainstorm, right? There's always an instigator. There's always something larger at play when you see events like this. So, and what we serve to do, I hope, is to nip it in the bud. So, but or
at least have some information when shit goes down. At least we can have some reliable information that we found on our own that maybe other people don't have. It's not like nobody knows about the Libs of TikTok thing. It's just that the average person doesn't, because 1 million is a lot, but 1 million is 1/300th of the United States population. So,
and we put it together when sometimes our local news, as we'll find out, does not. But this is ABC 7 with the story.
A children's story time turned into a nightmare Saturday afternoon at the San Lorenzo Library. Bay Area drag queen Panda Dulce was co-hosting a kids' reading event in celebration of Pride Month when suddenly the unthinkable happened.
8 to 10 Proud Boys marched in with their cameras blazing, pointed at me, jeering from the back.
A group of men believed to be affiliated with the far-right extremist Proud Boys group stormed the event. They made white power hand gestures as they began hurtling homophobic and transphobic insults at Dulce.
They said, "Who brought the tranny? It's a groomer. It's a pedophile. Why do you bring your kids to this event?"
Dulce was then escorted by security away from the men, and law enforcement was called. The Alameda County Sheriff's Office says they're investigating the incident and have activated their hate crime protocols. While that's come as a comfort for Dulce, she worries that incidents like these are organized and increasing. She's calling on all those opposed to stand up to extremism.
I think now is the time to unite and to come together as a united front.
not just for her, but also for the children. Dulce, who is Ivy League educated and has over a decade's experience in social work, says many of them were terrified.
I don't want to hurt you. I just want to tell you a story. That's it. I just want to tell you a story.
The event has come under heavy scrutiny from both local leaders as well as the San Lorenzo Library.
I really believe that libraries are places where everyone is welcome. We are open to every member of our community, and we can't be bowed.
She's all except the Proud Boys, all cut a bitch.
Or intimidated by these kind of threats. This is not what we're going to stand for.
And while it's left its mark on Dulce,
A lot of people are asking me, like, do you feel safe? Are you okay? And the answer is no, I don't. I don't feel safe in my own home.
she's determined not to be a victim. She tells me she's not going anywhere and will never let fear and intimidation stop her from doing the things she loves.
They were successful in scaring us, but they weren't successful in their ultimate goal, which is to make us go away because of their own discomfort with the diversity of our world. They failed in that.
In San Lorenzo, Tim Johns, ABC 7 News.
Yeah, I completely appreciate why Tim Johns went there with Ponda Dulce is Ivy League educated, right? And that's awesome. I mean, good on her. I don't think that was necessary for me to have whatever sympathy or empathy with Ponda Dulce. This is just fucked up regardless. Like I don't need I don't need any sort of validation of her as a person, right, or whatever. It's just this is on its basis fucked up, right?
That person could be a high school dropout who is now doing drag queen story time, and it's the story is the important part of the story is still the important part of the story. Correct.
That the disruption that happened and the intimidation and fear that she has to endure because of it. So I do appreciate it. I mean, I hope that the reporter cleared up the pronoun situation in advance too. So that's very good. So good on him. But yeah, I thought that was, I mean, it's great, but I didn't need to know that. And it's sort of like a qualifier for people who are a little skeptical to begin with, or a little squishy about trannies. There's a little bit more here of Ponda Dulce getting to speak her own mind about it. So thought we would go over to NBC Bay Area for a little more on the story.
Are now one of the first things you see when you come here to the San Lorenzo Library. The drag queen whose program was interrupted says she won't let that stop her pride.
I feel like there's still a part of me that is in that room.
Now you're not talking anymore.
A storytime conflict.
They called me a tranny, a groomer, a pedophile.
Ponda Dulce was just beginning the drag queen storytime event at the San Lorenzo Library when she says a group of men believed to be associated with the extremist group, the Proud Boys, started yelling insults and threats. She says one of the men wore a shirt with the message, "Kill your local pedophile."
I don't know if they're armed. I don't know if they're about to spray us with bullets.
Ponda Dulce was escorted out by security after the group refused to leave. Drag Queen Story Hour was created in San Francisco in 2015 and has spread around the globe. This isn't the first time the events have drawn protests.
I think what was different about this is how emboldened they felt. They marched right in. They had cameras blazing. They were just hurling insults.
The conflict even caused librarian Frederica Hurd to consider canceling her Juneteenth celebrations because she's concerned they might also be targeted.
When I first heard about it, fear just came over me.
Alameda County Sheriff's Office is investigating this as a hate crime along with charges of harassing children and making criminal threats. Investigators say they know who the men are, but so far no arrests have been made.
These are not cut and dry scenarios. You balance the issues of free speech with the issues of what is a hate crime.
Ponda Dulce came back to finish story time, sending a message to the disruptors.
They want us to shrink back into the closet, into obscurity, into the shadows, but clearly they have not met a drag queen before, because drag queens do not do obscurity and queers do not do quiet.
Well, drag queens do not do obscurity. That is part of their persona. As they're larger than life, they have to be, or they're not going to be a successful drag queen. They're not a successful performer.
Absolutely. The persona is everything. Well, good on her. And good on drag queens everywhere for persevering. And we've had a drag queen story hour here in San Jose at the library. Very well attended, very well received. And wouldn't you know it, not one child, inadvertently converted to a different sexual orientation or gender identity or expression. They kind of figure that shit out for themselves these days. So maybe we should let them. Anyway, well, I think there is a winner there in that Panda Dulce ain't going anywhere. And I fucking love the name, by the way, as a Giants fan. That's a beautiful, I don't know if that's what she's going for, but that homage to Pablo Sandoval. So thank you for that, Panda Dulce. In other winners and losers news, though, tonight, we've got three stories that are just kind of, we got three stories that are kind of just sick and just make you think that there's way too many just savages and dumbasses out there in our towns. But anyway, the first one is about one of our local state senators who I'm sure not alone, but has been receiving some pretty nasty threats during Pride Month.
This is the profanity-laced email threat State Senator Scott Wiener's staff got Sunday. The headline is concerning, but the second paragraph is what raised the biggest red flags. It reads, "We placed bombs in his office and his house. We will kill you." That's what prompted San Francisco police to search his home and California Highway Patrol to search his office in Sacramento. Senator Wiener says he gets threats pretty regularly, but believes this one may be part of a pattern.
We're seeing this escalating campaign of rhetoric attacking our community. And so when that happens enough, it's just a matter of time before people get so riled up and brainwashed that they act.
It comes on the same weekend that Alameda County Sheriff's deputies were called to drag queen story time at the San Lorenzo Library Saturday. That's because a group of men started harassing entertainer Panda Dulce before story time.
Did you guys call the cops?
One of the men wore a shirt with an AK-47 and the words "Kill your local pedophile." Another wore a black and yellow Proud Boys cap. Alameda County deputies are investigating to see if any charges can be filed. Also on Saturday, officers in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, arrested 31 members of the white nationalist group Patriot Front. Police there say a citizen called 911 after spotting men loading into a U-Haul. It was stopped just a quarter of a mile from that city's LGBTQ Pride festivities.
Based not only on the 911 call, but the information contained within the call about the weapons that they were seen loading and the riot gear and things of that nature. We made a command decision to make the stop prior to them getting downtown to prevent a riot from happening.
San Francisco police say they've had no indications of any credible threats aimed at any of the LGBTQ Pride events scheduled here in the city in a couple weeks, but they will be having a security briefing later this week because of this weekend's events. Despite the threats aimed at him, Senator Wiener says he's looking forward to celebrating the first Pride event in the city since the pandemic.
I look forward to seeing everyone there, and the last thing we want to do is be intimidated by people into not celebrating our community.
In San Francisco, Sergio Quintana, NBC, Bay Area News.
Not for nothing, Austin Bennett has been trying to target harassment at State Senator Wiener.
Interesting. For over squishiness about his homosexuality or generally about his policy decisions?
It's specifically about his homosexuality.
Well, there's
a picture of him, and I don't know if it was his boyfriend or not, or just a date or a friend at Pride, where he was wearing like just a little bit of leather, like no shirt and just a very small amount of leather, like you wouldn't even notice it. And Austin's like, "Oh, that's sadomasochism." That person with him, Austin used terminology I'm uncomfortable using. Him talking about the person who he was with and the nature of their relationship. And so I don't think it was Austin Bennett's people, because Austin Bennett don't have no fucking people anymore. Like nobody watches Austin Bennett's videos, but it's like he's part of the sort of ecosystem around that. And what's going on right now is that this whole thing about just by nature of being queer that we're trying to hurt children, or that just our existence as queer people is sexually explicit because we showed up somewhere. I've gone to your house, and it was obviously sexually explicit when I showed up, but that was planned, and everybody was consenting, and we had a little bit of the VCR head cleaner, and everybody had a great time.
Everybody had a good year. No, most definitely. It's always a good time. Are you kidding? I'll say this much, like on that subject, as far as having a good time. I've never had a better time than when I've lived in communities that were predominantly queer. If you don't mind me appropriating the term just for a moment, West Hollywood was one of the greatest places I ever lived, because you went outside and you just felt welcomed and warm and loved, no matter where you walked or went. And man, wouldn't it be great for everywhere to be like that? I don't know. I've never lived in the Castro, so I don't know if it's the same vibe. But that was definitely the vibe I got in WeHo, so I missed that a lot.
Yeah, I lived not on Castro, but the neighborhood, right? Church. I lived on off of Market on Church, and yeah, but I liked it because it was like my place was like halfway between the Castro and Soma, and so I could like go to dinner in the Castro and then go clubbing in Soma, because I wasn't really into the music so much at the gay bars. But man, the restaurants were good, and the few years I was able to afford to fucking live there were amazing.
Dual citizenship, in other words.
Yeah, dual citizenship. That's what we call dual citizenship. You dinner in the gayborhood, clubbing in the raveborhood. Yeah,
right. In San Francisco, that's really what it's like in the neighborhoods, right? They're very fierce about their neighborhoods,
right? And it's a big problem. It's getting worse, and there's nothing that like, we like. What am I going to do about it? I just I don't think anything's likely to happen at like San Francisco Pride, but at smaller Pride events, I'd be more concerned maybe with Silicon Valley Pride, because it's a much smaller event.
And also just maybe more lack security. SJPD is not necessarily the best staffed, and et cetera, et cetera.
And just easier overall for people who aren't from the Bay Area to get into and park in San Jose.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we will definitely be vigilant, but also it's just, there's huge underlying predominant, ingrained social issues that we're dealing with here. And we do have to figure a way out of it. And a lot of it's just going to be generational change and just raising our children right and making sure that our children win the culture war at some point.
Well, the problem is when we win the culture war, we win it in the culture. We win it with movies, TV, music, entertainment. We win it in the culture. When the other side comes back at us, they come back at us and either will use the state violence, or if they can do it, state violence, to try to push back against the culture war that they've already lost in the culture. And by losing, it literally means that like you could just walk down the street and be gay and usually not get bothered. That's what losing to them means. It's not like some major victory for queer people to be able to just walk down the fucking street. Like that's the bare minimum.
It's absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself, actually. Well, shit is flying off the handle here in a lot of ways, and Scott Wiener is not the only public official who has taken it on the head lately. Unfortunately, a Millbrae City Council member was up in San Francisco, and things got a little crazy with a concrete block.
Another unprovoked act of violence in San Francisco. This time, it happened to Millbrae Council member Anders Fung, who was with his family on Saturday afternoon. He says two men threw a concrete block at him. NBC Bay Area's Ginger Kanahiro-Saab spoke to Mr. Fung, who says it was clearly a deliberate attack.
It's not how Millbrae Council member Anders Fung envisioned his family's weekend would go. While they were enjoying a Saturday outdoors at Land's End Park in San Francisco, he says he was deliberately attacked with this concrete block, which was thrown from at least 20 feet above him. He suffered a 2-inch laceration on his head and a neck injury.
As I was just walking by the cove, I got struck by a heavy object on top of my head. And I struggled to get up, and as I was getting up, I continued to see heavy object casted very close to me.
Anders says his family tried to stop it, but it became even more obvious that the men were targeting him.
My family yelled at him to stop, and that is when they give my family the obscene hand gesture, and then they fled the scene.
Today, visitors to Land's End were not aware of yesterday's terrifying attack, but they say even if they are not the victims themselves, the violence must stop.
It's a problem. It shouldn't happen. Whether it was because he was Asian or not, something has to change.
And Anders believes the attacks can stop, encouraging victims to speak out and report them when they happen to authorities.
Somebody could have died from this injury. And many people have died from previous attack to the API communities. And senseless violence and hateful acts such as this has to stop.
In San Francisco, Ginger Conejero-Saab, NBC Bay Area News.
It was the darkest episode of Downballot in a while, isn't it?
It's been a dark kind of week, actually, as most weeks post-election generally are. But I remember watching that bit or that piece with The Good Wife when it was originally on, and thinking at multiple times during that piece, my God, producer David is going to just lament the audio in this clip. And I'm thinking at one point, the guy with the 49er hat, like, I get that he said some profound-ish stuff, but I don't know if it was profound enough to necessitate the audio the audio interruption with the wind and everything. So
maybe that was the only clip maybe there was like nobody out when they went out or whatever, and that was the only passerby who was willing to put their face on the news.
Most likely, like, I don't know if they'd make that editorial decision if they had options, right? But anyway, that's sort of, you're right. That's sort of getting away from the point. This has not been a very fun week on the local scene, and it's not going to get any better in the next clip because there's folks doing even worse shit out there. And this is in San Jose.
15-year-old victim told me that she was walking here on Monroe Street on Friday afternoon when someone drove up behind her and shot her in the back with a pellet gun. Now we've learned that a 9-year-old girl and a woman were also attacked the same day.
My lungs felt like they were being compressed, and it hurt really bad because it was really hard to breathe.
15-year-old Gianna Vitarelli describes what happened after someone shot her in the back with a pellet gun. This x-ray shows extensive injuries, including a fractured rib. You can also see the pellet is still lodged in her body. Doctors told her it was too risky to remove it. And while she believes she may have been the victim of a prank, perhaps one encouraged by a TikTok challenge, she says her injuries are serious.
But it collapsed my lung. It almost hit my heart. It broke my rib, and it caused internal bleeding.
Police say so far they haven't connected the attack to a TikTok challenge, but they also say Gianna is not the only victim targeted Friday.
I can confirm that we are investigating at least another 2 pellet shootings that occurred over the last several days. We don't know if they're connected yet.
The first attack was on a 42-year-old woman in a Walmart parking lot on Stevens Creek Boulevard. Less than an hour later, a 9-year-old girl was shot in the back near Westgate Mall. Today, people in the area near Valley Fair Mall, where Gianna was shot Friday, say they're on edge. Bonnie Williams says she plans to carry an alarm and pepper spray.
What kind of people are walking around
Bonnie
doing these things? And this is, near Valley Fair Mall, so you'd think it's sort of safe here, but nowhere is safe. Disgusting.
Gianna, a Notre Dame San Jose high school student, was discharged from Santa Clara Valley Medical Center today and headed home where friends welcomed her with gifts on her front porch. While Gianna's condition is improving, she's still wondering why someone targeted her.
Honestly, I'm just very confused. I don't know why anyone would shoot me.
Police say if they do catch the person behind these pellet gun attacks, they will face a charge of assault with a deadly weapon, which is a felony. Reporting live in San Jose, Marianne Favreau, NBC Bay Area News.
That is crazy. People don't understand. People think a pellet gun is almost like being shot with a paintball or something. I think a lot of people believe, and it's not the case. People go hunt small game with pellet guns.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. This is fucking frightening for anyone who has kids or just goes walking with their dog anytime, especially near these malls. A good wife and I don't live too far away from Valley Fair. Shocking that it would be in the Valley Fair community. What a safe community. Although Marianne Favreau was doing that report from outside the Republican Party headquarters.
I wonder if that was intentional.
Right. There's that. But yeah, no, this is a little scary and sketchy, and absolutely the good wife and I go walking every night through our neighborhood, and we've absolutely. But I hate to have succumb to fear and other base emotions. But yeah, we've certainly been a little more cautious and looking around, checking over our shoulders. And I don't want to be that way. Not in my own neighborhood, but it's sort of where it's at right now. There's just a lot of crazy shit happening out there, and I don't want it to come home to roost. So rather than reverting back to my normal Zen self, I have been a little more vigilant lately, but I'd prefer not to be.
Yeah, for sure. I just feel like this is, I don't know, the thing that happened here, the thing I don't like about this is they're like, it may have been a TikTok challenge. And like, the problem with that is, what do they mean by a TikTok challenge? Did somebody once see a TikTok video where they're like, oh, go shoot people with a pellet gun? Like, or is it like a widespread thing? And the reason that it's a problem is that if it has nothing to do with any kind of TikTok challenge, then people are going to like divert resources in the wrong direction. They're going to be like, there's just going to be, it's just stupid. Like, I don't think there's a big TikTok challenge of people, like, otherwise it'd be all over the news that people all over the country are getting shot with a fucking pellet gun all the time.
Yeah, no, and it didn't sound like PD was concerned that was really the issue anyway. It sounded like more that was a neighborhood or a community concern. And I can vouch for that, just having worked in public service and with youth. Parents especially can get pretty, if you leave them in a vacuum and you don't give them answers, they will come up with some fucking answers pretty quick. And they will believe them 100% no matter what the facts are. So if they hear something, it usually becomes truth pretty quickly, especially on Nextdoor. So
and it becomes like a moral panic now, right? Like now we're gonna have like this. You're right. I think if the police maybe know that it's not, or don't have any evidence that it is, and maybe it was just an offhand comment by the news, but then you end up with like another moral panic just around like a fucking app where people mostly are having fun and doing dances,
right?
And the app does a better. These people, TikTok, funny enough, does a better job than Facebook of putting the kibosh on this stuff when they find out about it, or like at least when they're subjected to public pressure around this stuff. And if anybody learned about this or got this idea from anywhere, I'd be willing to bet it was either from their friends, from Facebook. It was probably kids, I guess, but it might have been adults. I don't know. It's just like I don't know if the news should be speculating about whether or not something is like a cultural phenomena or whatever, because they have. This was a few people got shot with a pellet gun, but I'm assuming this is going to be one person or one group of people.
I'm hoping it's kids that are just being fucking stupid. And they see this shit on the news and realize that they fucking almost killed somebody. And this pellet gun is kind of dangerous. Shit, maybe I shouldn't be fucking taking it out of dad's closet or whatever, or mom's closet, and taking it out and pegging people. I thought it was totally harmless and just a prank. So hopefully that's all it is. But just another sign that we're failing our kids anyway. If they think that's something fun they should do, even if they don't think it could cause life and death kind of damage, right? Fatal damage. Even if they think it's just a prick on the skin or just a prank, like what the fuck are kids thinking? I don't know. I'll work on it, Producer Dave. I'll work on it.
You'll work on it. You work on figuring out what the kids are thinking.
No, it's raising them right. I got some big news, Producer Dave. I got big news.
Fantastic.
But we'll get into that later.
Excellent. So who has to get their shit together this week?
Getting their feces in order in San Francisco, as usual. The police union, the POA, apparently their president had to resign. We don't have a whole lot in this story, but we'll find out more later probably. But the president had to resign over some sketchy issues with appropriation of credit cards.
Head of San Francisco's police union has stepped down from that job. Tony Montoya submitted his resignation, according to the San Francisco Standard. The paper says there are concerns raised after he drove a vehicle owned by the union to his new home in Nevada and used a union credit card to pay for the gas. Montoya says that did not violate any union policies or practices. Now, Montoya has been on medical leave for several months. Tracy McCray, who's been the interim union president, will stay in that job until a union election is held next February.
Well, there you go. So leadership change coming at SFPOA, even though they've already sort of had one. But But yeah, nothing terribly surprising here, but definitely another opportunity for SF to get their shit together. And that kind of leads us into our next story, frankly, as we move on down ballot. But we'll keep you posted as things develop with the election for the new SFPOA head. More than likely, they'll get along with a little better with whoever the DA, next DA of San Francisco is, and it's not going to be Chesa Boudin, who unfortunately was recalled last week. So as soon as that's official, 30 days after the election, London Breed will be able to appoint a new district attorney. So we'll probably find out pretty soon who that's going to be.
So it didn't. It went down 55-45 approximately, with exactly what you'd expect: the Nob Hill people, the people on the North Shore, the people who live in the financial district, the people who live by the Embarcadero. Strangely enough, not the Castro, but the nicer, richer, whiter parts of San Francisco, the Western Addition, voting for the recall, and the less socioeconomically advantaged and browner parts of the city voting no on the recall.
As you would expect. And I'm sure it's similar to the demographics of how the vote went down when Chesa beat Susie Loftus and others in a ranked choice voting contest a few years back when he was first elected, or a couple years ago when he was first elected. So we're going to find out a little bit about how San Francisco is reacting to recalling Chesa, and it's certainly become a national story in that national reporters and news want to make it out to be some sort of signifier about the criminal justice reform movement and the defund the police movement and Black Lives Matter movement and every other movement for social justice, and make this some sort of referendum on that. I don't think it is. It's fucking San Francisco being San Francisco. But Garvin and the NBC Bay Area News are going to give us a little more on the people on the street and on both sides, how they're feeling about the post-recall environment.
The DA's recall raises lots of questions for people who live or work in the city. One of the biggest being, what does this all mean for San Francisco moving forward? Will it actually make the city safer? Here's what NBC Bay Area's Ginger Kanehiro-Saab found out.
Reactions to Chesa Boudin's recall have poured in nationwide, with even the White House weighing in. The same is happening here at home from different communities across the city, both sides feeling very differently about the results. Both sides also still hoping for the same thing: change for the city. Videos like this have become an all too common sight in San Francisco's Chinatown. Business owners say the city hasn't been holding looters and other criminals accountable. But today, they hope, is the start of something different.
We're more hopeful than we've ever been before that maybe there will be a change in the city.
Betty Louie and other community leaders acknowledge crime and safety were a serious problem long before Chesa Boudin took office. But it's clear to them he could have done more.
He probably isn't the reason for everything, but I also believe that some of his actions spoke very loudly.
The Police Officers Association has been vocal about their disconnect with the DA's office.
And what you saw happen yesterday was someone being held accountable.
Police union leaders say they want to see dangerous or repetitive criminals locked up, but acknowledge reform in the criminal justice system needs to continue.
And that's what our reputation needs to be, is that come to San Francisco, have a great time. But what we won't tolerate is people taking advantage of other people.
The ACLU Northern California chapter led the opposition to Boudin's recall efforts.
ACLU is obviously disappointed in the outcome of this recall,
but remain committed to continuing what Boudin set out to do.
It would be a mistake to read too much into this election outcome. The recall vote was not a repudiation of criminal justice reform. It was not a referendum on the National Progressive Prosecutor Movement, which really is continuing to gain momentum.
For his part, Boudin told supporters last night they all have to keep working for that reform.
It was not the work of 1 year or one term. It's certainly not the work of one man or woman or one office. It is work that requires a sustained social movement.
In San Francisco, Ginger Kanehiro-Saab, NBC Bay Area News.
Well, that was that. The ACLU lady seemed fairly disappointed.
Yeah,
as you might
definitely having a sad. Definitely having a sad. So yeah, I don't believe this. I agree with her. I don't think this was a referendum on the broader issue. I think the pendulum swings back and forth, and between the between the fervent out there, right? The movement that's kind of pushing back on everything and anything incumbent and anything about the establishment right now. And then San Francisco being what it is, and Chesa being who he is, and just the particulars of who he was, right? And where he came from, and his parents, and the whole 9 yards, right? The narrative. Unfortunately, I think it conspired against him here. But like you said, 55-45, right? So it was almost 2-1 the night we opened it up, right? Almost, it was over 60%.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's come back down. So I think that says a lot, frankly. I don't know that he got 45% first place votes in the ranked choice voting. I think he got like a plurality, like in the 30s. So, I at the end of the day, even in a conservative electorate, it was, it was closer than folks thought it was going to be. And that says a lot. So I don't think that chess is going anywhere. I don't think this movement's going anywhere. I don't think San Francisco is going anywhere. It's going to continue to be fucking weird. And we'll see who London Breed appoints and how long they last in this fucking job, since it seems like it's not a very fun job to have right now. You're pretty much under the spotlight, and you're being asked to protect the entire city when that's really not your job.
So before we get to our next story, as we were going live, one of our viewers saw this story. This is from the Mercury News. We don't have any local news hits on it yet. This is the bomb squad in San Jose found an explosive device at councilwoman's window in a Willow Glen home. This is Dev Davis, District 6. She ran for mayor, did not get the nod for mayor. And this is just, kind of came in right as we were starting the show. So I figured instead of waiting until next week, we'll probably have a news hit for it for next week, but I figure we could bring it up now. Because this is just more of the winners and losers segment, more of the, now we have 3 stories this week where it looks like a local politician, local council person has been, targeted. In this case, though, the one case was an email. It could just be some crank. The one was a brick that they threw at the person. I don't know if they were throwing it directly at that person because of their role as a Millbrae city council person, but it's not out of the question. And the gentleman seemed to believe that was the case. So maybe he knows more than we do, or there's maybe he knows more than we do, and didn't have a chance to get into it, or didn't want to get into it on the news there. But now we have Dev Davis here in San Jose with a explosive device being placed
at her home, in North Willow Glen. Thank you. Good, great eagle eyes from our viewer and listener. Thank you so much for pushing this in. I actually had seen this as we were going to air tonight, and I was going to mention it around the Scott Wiener story, and you're right, it ties pretty well. Unfortunately, sadly, it ties well into stories we've already run tonight. And that was on the docket before this had even come out. But I did hear about this internally early on today, and didn't know if it was going to be made public, frankly. So I'm glad it has been, because it goes to show that not only is this a thankless job being an elected official, no matter what you think of Deb Davis or what I think of her, or what anyone thinks of her policy making, or or her as a person, even this is ridiculous. This shouldn't be happening. This ain't right. And I had heard that one of the mayoral candidates had been receiving death threats. I don't know if it was Dev as well, but during the race. So there was quite a bit of police security at all the forums and all the events that they had. And it was sad. I even went to a forum or a candidate meet and greet for mayor or mayoral candidates where there were more cops than mayoral candidates there to defend, to protect them, which is good, but it shouldn't have to be that way. This is I'm sure we'll have video on something on this sooner or later. I think maybe Kron had a story on it, but it may not have video yet either, because it is still developing. But we'll have more on this next week if there is more to tell you. But that's disturbing.
It's just that's just been the kind of the theme this week, and I figured that's why I'd bring it up, as we've talked a bit about elected officials being targeted. We don't know what's going on here. We don't know an explosive device, I mean, we don't know what it was. You know, it could be anything from like a firecracker all the way to something very dangerous. And we
it
just
doesn't
don't
matter.
know.
She has kids too. She has kids in like middle school, I think, at this point, or maybe young high school kids. I forget how old they are, but they're, you know, young enough that even a firework would be dangerous if they didn't know what they were getting into coming home. Right? There's something on the porch, so that's really that's really sad. So, well, hopefully we'll have more details, and they can catch the perpetrator at some point. Since they did recover the device, hopefully there's some evidence that our industrious police officers will use to uncover who that was. So, one incident where hopefully they do their job well. In other news,
you know, not for nothing either. Like, she was definitely, well, I didn't like any of them. The mayor, like I came to the conclusion nobody to root for. But it was like a toss up. It was like a toss up between her and somebody else. If I was in San Jose, who I would have voted for based on everything I saw, even though I don't like agree with her politics, I just thought she was I didn't really agree with anyone's politics because there were cops and shit in there. I was like, well, she's not a cop and she seems competent. So
she is very true to her values and she's very true to who she is. There's part of me that loves her because she's very wonky and data driven and, you know, analytical. And there's part of me that hates her because, frankly, I think sometimes she can be a little racist and a little bit xenophobic without even intending to be, because she's a very nice person. I've never had any bad interactions with her myself, but I'm a white dude, so who knows? And her kids, by the way, are, as she makes the point all the time, are adopted and Latino. So even though she herself is from North Dakota, so go figure. So, she tends to be a little conservative. Anyway.
So what's up with this next story here?
Just recapping last week's primary election here in California, the June 7th election, in case you didn't hear, featured pretty low turnout in the neighborhood of like record low turnout as a percentage of registered voters. The caveat there is that there are a ton more registered voters now than there have ever been in California. So the pool of potential voters is much bigger. So that, you know, that usually could bring down the number if you have the same number. But all that means is basically the same number of people voting, right? And just a lower percentage. So we're not really doing much to move the needle. Turnout was abysmally low, not really across the board, though. If you dig deeper into the numbers, the vote, especially in San Jose and in this area, was dominated by white people, 65 and older. That was the largest voting demographic. Young people did not vote at a very high clip.
Do you mean like raw numbers or like percentage of percentage of the registered who turned out?
Correct. Percentage of eligible, registered voters, registered white 65 plus voters, right? Their share of the electorate was higher, but they turned out at a higher clip in their demographic, and their share of the vote was much higher because of that. And young people did not turn out to vote. Very, very, very low turnout. African Americans, Asian Americans voted at a pretty decent clip. Asian Americans tend to vote at a pretty decent clip in general. But Latino voters, as usual, were at a very low clip. It was something in the neighborhood of 15% of the eligible Latino voters voted. I don't know what that translated to in terms of the share of the vote, but they're already a smaller share of the vote to begin with. So 15% of 15% is not very much. So Latino leaders, locally at least, are lamenting this. Oh, that was some interesting alliteration. But it's a problem that's been chronic in the Latino community. We'll hear about it here, and we can talk about it more on the other side.
15%. That's the dismal voter turnout in the Latino community in the June primary, which was just last week. Community leaders are wondering, what's next? NBC Bay Area's Damian Trujillo is in San Jose with a look at what they're considering to help reignite the Latino vote.
California tried to make voting easy by mailing ballots to every home. No need to leave the house to cast your vote. And yet turnout was dismal on June 7th. The consulting firm Political Data Intelligence estimates only 25% of eligible voters actually voted. The highest turnout was among white voters at just 30%. 25% of African Americans voted, 24% of Asian Americans, and among registered Latinos, only 15% turned in a ballot.
I'm appalled and I'm disheartened, but I'm also seriously alarmed.
Blanca Alvarado spent a lifetime fighting for political and social equity as the first Latina elected to the San Jose City Council.
For people to not vote is to not only shirk their responsibility, but to let somebody else be in charge of their lives. I think that's shameful.
Political analysts have called Latinos the sleeping giant because of their huge voter potential. That giant woke up a few years ago with a large Latino turnout in the presidential election. Now some wonder if the political giant has gone back to sleep. You didn't vote?
No.
Why not?
Forgot.
No.
No votó por qué no? Why didn't you vote?
No.
She says she's not even registered to vote. The Latina Coalition of Silicon Valley says there needs to be a deep dive to find the root cause of Latino voter apathy and turn things around in time for the November elections. The silver lining, the group says Latinas in Santa Clara County overwhelmingly won or are in the lead going into the November runoffs. So no one is ready to throw in the towel.
That there have been times, and there will be times, when Latinos will manifest their voices at the polls, and we will be holding people accountable.
The fight for November, they say, begins now. Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
Yeah, the fight for November was done like 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. Like, but the engagement it takes. I'm gonna soapbox for a second, then I want to hear your thoughts, Producer Dave. I'm so sorry, but yeah, the engagement it takes to get anyone, I don't care what demographic you come from, to vote for, especially for a specific issue, not just to vote and cast a ballot, but to vote for a specific person or a specific position, right, is so great. The threshold is so great to get that done, and it's not going to get done in any significant way before November. I'm going to put that out there right now. This is something it is another one of those generational shifts, but it's going to take a generation's worth of investment, and I just don't see that happening, unfortunately. And it's a universe of people. It's a community. It's a population that desperately needs to have a voice, and they just don't. They're not there, and it's not. I don't want to blame them at all. It's not. Frankly, it's not. There are systems designed and put into place to prevent them. To depress them and to not prevent them from having a vote, because everyone gets a ballot mailed to them right now, right? There's no excuse. You have a ballot on your coffee table in your apartment, wherever you are. It's coming to you in the mail. You can send it back free of charge. It's not that. It's compelling them to vote. It's compelling them to believe that they have an impact, that their vote matters, that whoever they're voting for, they can trust to lead them. And they just don't feel that way. And I can't blame them. But that's a much bigger problem than any one election. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Producer Dave.
Well, not for nothing. Like, there's just this big conversation around this non-existent voter fraud, and it to some extent is going to depress voter turnout, I think, on the right, because they think that the left is going to steal the election. But also, if that's just in the discourse, I think it's going to depress the vote among people who everyone is saying their votes are fraudulent. Right. Mm-hmm. Nobody thinks that the white people over 65, there were a lot of fraudulent votes there, right? The messaging from the people who are putting out the lies about voter fraud, it's not about grandma, Nope. They'll say dead people voted. They'll say dead people voted, but that's just like, they're not really aiming it at the older people, right? They're just saying that, but the all the time when they do this, they always talk about it being in the cities. It's always in the enclaves of the cities, or when we talk about voter fraud, they're like, oh, Detroit. Well, Detroit, Chicago, there's coding there. It's not that those aren't diverse cities. It's not that it's not that no white people live there. It's that those cities are coded as black and brown cities. They have been 100%. In our discourse since I was a kid. I probably, when I was a kid, said problematic things about those cities because of the way they're discussed in the media. I don't remember anything, but I bet I did, right? Just because of the way they're discussed. And so if you keep hearing that your vote is fraudulent, that your community, when your community votes, even if it's not in your state, if it's all the way across the country, you keep hearing from everybody, not everybody, but from a loud contingent of people, that when your communities come out and vote, that it's fraudulent. When people start showing up at the polling places, if you remember in 2000, they called it the Brooks Brothers riot, where they were banging on the windows of the polling place, and I believe it was Broward County, Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, intimidating voters, intimidating poll workers. You know, we're not doing anything to help with that either, right? With the intimidation factor.
Well,
but
they don't
the
even
end
have
of
to intimidate somebody like as an individual to possibly depress turnout just by messaging that their community's vote is fraudulent.
No, not at all, and not even just fraudulent. Just at the end of the day, meaningless. That's when you talk about voter apathy. It's not voter apathy necessarily like, oh, I just never like any of these candidates, or I don't, I don't care to vote, or I don't care what's going on. They do. People do give a shit. People do care. People are aware that elections are happening, right? Like I said, in California, everyone's getting mailed a ballot and a bunch of information. So it's not as though you're not aware that it's happening. You're definitely aware. Everyone I talked to was aware that an election was happening. Everyone I knocked on the door of was aware that an election was happening. They were not compelled to vote. And for either because they didn't find anyone or anything worth voting for, but more likely, and what you hear from across the board, really, when the question is asked, the primary reason they don't is because they don't feel like their vote matters. Well, why don't they feel like their vote matters? It's not because they don't think that, that the who vote those who votes, right? Like they don't realize, they know that if you vote for someone, they're going to get elected. They just don't believe that whoever gets elected or whatever gets passed, it's not going to work for them, right? It's not going to be there for them. And they're going to say all the right things to get elected. They're going to talk about DACA and immigration reform and, raising the wage and going into the communities and giving more, doing more equity and bringing more money and resources back to the community and to the east side in San Jose, right? And they say this over and over and over again. And yet, the people on the ground don't see any change. They don't see any change in their community, any significant change, right? There's things here and there. Oh, a park opened over there, or there's a new street light over there. But they don't see any significant culture, societal or economic shift in their communities because of who they vote for. They don't. And they don't because it's not happening, because people do say whatever they want to get elected and then they move on. So two things have to happen. One, I think, as the white dude and the straight white dude in the room, the Latino community has to step up and just consistently be engaged and involved, and yes, vote and have a voice. Because if they don't, then they will be taken advantage of until kingdom come. And yes, the elected officials and people in power need to do more to respect the community and to empower them more and to give them more of a voice. So both those things need to happen.
And not for nothing, like in San Jose, it's like specifically is a good example. It's not like cost of living isn't skyrocketing over there on the east side, just like it is everywhere else. But if you live over there on the east side, no matter who you are, you see all the city services going to the west side and the north side, and you see like, oh, there's this. What do you mean? There's a utopia being built by Google over there. Right. What do you mean?
Downtown West. It's even called Downtown West.
Right, of course. Yeah, downtown West. You say, what do you mean over there on the north side? They're trying to build more housing in these nice places with fountains and stuff for the tech workers. What do you mean? Why is my rent 1.5 times what it was 4 or 5 years ago, and we don't get any of that? I know that the rent doesn't go to making the things in the community happen, but it's you're seeing your cost of living go up no matter where you live in the South Bay, and you're watching all the resources. And not for nothing, what about you're seeing all this great city services here in Campbell, Los Gatos, Saratoga, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, Mountain View, and
you got yourself a light rail line. You got your own light rail line, right?
Yeah, and you're over there on the
light
east
rail
side.
line to the east side wraps around the whole damn universe before it gets back anywhere. It takes forever to get anywhere.
Right. More
by way of Milpitas, the east side by way of Milpitas.
Yeah, more. Yeah, the light rail almost seems like it was designed to avoid the east side to some extent.
Completely.
So then if you're on transit, you're taking like a city bus, and there's nothing wrong with the city buses. They're air conditioned. But they're not on time like the light rail is. And so you're just seeing all these other people get all these services from the city. Yeah. And you see it over and over again. It doesn't matter doesn't matter who you are, you're going to start to become apathetic about local politics. And because the east side tends to skew a little more Latino than the rest of the community, the rest of San Jose and the rest of the South Bay, it's going to depress turnout among that particular demographic, among other people, just other low income people. And by the way, not for nothing, there there ain't no low income anything on the east side. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much do you think a 2-bedroom apartment is there? $2,600, $2,700, $2,800, $3,000 maybe if it's got like a pergo or something in it.
Well, it's plenty close to the median or the average, right? You're right. Like the cost of living doesn't go down just because you go across 101. The amount of wages, that those folks are making go down, right? The amount of resources that are provided in those communities go down. The amount of amenities and public amenities that are provided in those neighborhoods go down, right? But the cost of living does not go down, right? And that's the fucking problem.
It may be $80 or $100 less for the same apartment. And
right.
not for nothing.
Maybe.
If you end up in Sunnyvale, that apartment's going to be $1,000 more. But that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, and there's also naturally, not quote unquote naturally affordable housing too, right? It's not as though the only reason it's any less is because the quality of living is not quite as good either too. So they do acknowledge that in the rent a little bit, but it's not significant enough that it's going to make much of a difference, and you're still paying what a tech bro on the west side pays for rent, generally speaking, right? You're not making anywhere near as much. So there are systemic problems at play here, and frankly, I wouldn't believe in the system either. But at this point, but you know what? At the end of the day, black people voting at 25%. And they don't have anything, I think, to cheer about in terms of how the system has treated them. So, and gotta be something we can do.
I mean, in San Jose, the South Bay particularly, like compared to the rest of the state, African Americans are very grossly underrepresented here. There's just not a lot of black.
Well, there are not many of them.
Yeah.
Not
a lot of black and that's fine. That's fine. It's not like a huge problem. It's not like there's rampant discrimination against black folks versus anyone else here. It's just for whatever reason, historically, black folks haven't moved to San Jose and Latino folks have. But it's bad for the city when a group is big in population, like proportion, as the Latino folks here in San Jose aren't voting at a very high rate. It's bad for everybody. I just think that if there's one group, one demographic that has the right to vote and is registered, isn't coming out, I don't care what demographic it is. It's bad for everybody if they're not voting.
Yeah. I bet on all of us, really. And in general, going beyond just the demographic numbers, I think we're looking at 30% turnout right now in Santa Clara County, which is just awful. I mean, granted, primaries in gubernatorial election years, generally speaking, is not very high. So it's not unprecedented. It's just really bad, and especially in the context of where we've been recently, where we've seen record turnout, we've seen people engaged, but they're engaged. We're finding out they're engaged. I mean, we're not finding out. It's something I've been preaching for a long time, but folks are not engaged by local issues. They are not engaged by the mayor's race. They are not engaged by their city council race. They're not excited about whatever ballot measure is going to affect their water rates or anything like that until later, until they figure out, oh shit, down the line, the people I vote for city council and for board of supervisors and for school board actually control 95% of my day-to-day life. Until they realize that, they don't care, and they key off of the presidential election because it's on the news all the time. And maybe they learn a little bit about the state issues. But the reason why presidential elections have high turnout is because people know about the presidential election. They don't care who's running for mayor. So it doesn't matter when you hold the election. People need to be more engaged on local issues. And how do we do that is a much bigger issue than can be solved in any 6-month startup election, unfortunately. But whoever can solve that is going to win a lot of elections. I'll tell you that much.
Unless they solve it by being such a giant piece of shit that everybody comes out to vote against them, like the former guy.
Yes, exactly. Like the revolution of common sense.
Right.
We'll go there later when we get into the mayor's race in November. That's going to be fun. Talk about a freaking Russian roulette. Pick your poison, folks, in that race. All right. Well, that's Down Ballot Watch for today. We've dug deep enough, I think, into our post-election mortem thing. Post-mortem election recap. So now we go down to another thing. And we always like to have, at least some sort of animal interest, human interest story to try to have a nice palate cleanser. So,
something a little bit feel good.
Exactly. So that's what we're gonna get into now. So enjoy this feel good story after a really down day on the Down Ballot.
Pushing the limits, Zion Rick Gaines isn't giving up his dream. The 19-year-old lost his eyesight last year, still determined to become a professional skateboarder.
Something really important and special to me, and the fact that I could still do it, especially due to my accident, I I can't give up.
Zion is legally blind after being shot in a senseless act of gun violence. Now owning his new identity, the glass eye stamped with the Thrasher logo, a popular skateboard magazine.
And I kind of have it memorized in my head how the park looks. So I usually walk this way.
His cane guiding his way, patience and persistence doing the rest.
I'll try something until I land it, and sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't, but it's just all about keep practicing.
And his unwavering positivity is a product of his mother, Charmaine.
Part of my motivation and part of my dedication, hard work and determination and consistency, I've all had to learn those things, and those are all things I've learned from my mom.
The single mother's name inked on his forearm forever.
She did it. She raised me all by herself all these years, so, you know, a big part of my character, a big part of the way I am is a reflection of my mom.
And Zion's unwillingness to give up is capturing the imaginations of his fellow skateboarders and inspiring them.
He's just out here already getting some good bouncing attempts. Like when I get on, I immediately will slide off, and I can see perfectly fine. I have 20/20 vision, and he's out here doing such insane stuff. It's crazy.
Zion himself admitting he doesn't completely understand his ability.
I ask the same question to myself. I don't even know how I do it sometimes. Commitment is one thing, though, that I can definitely say is a part of it.
For another high five.
Commitment, and he says community.
And, you know, with skateboarding, you know, it's all a big family. So we all get to vibe with each other. What? Come on.
And in those moments of frustration and fear, Zion fights through.
Things can seem scary, but if you take risks and if you just keep going for it, you might achieve it.
Tara Campbell, ABC 7 News.
Well, that's wild.
That's pretty cool.
Like skateboarding is very hard for the sighted. Like the one other kid was saying, he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "I can see this shit's pretty hard."
Yeah, right. Although there's got to be something to be said, I think, in all sport, generally speaking, for, you know, just not, I don't want to say hand-eye coordination, just coordination in general, right? And some of that natural feel, right, without some of the senses. So good on this guy. I hope he succeeds. I hope he can go thrash it up at a tournament sometime. That'd be pretty fun to see him on a street course. But you know, if only all of us would be that perseverant in the midst of tragedy.
Definitely.
All right. Well, that was a nice palate cleanser, producer Dave. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you for coming correct tonight, as always.
As always. The new overlay looks great. Everything works. The computer did not melt.
That's good to know. I could tell from here. So, and my internet hung in for just a couple minutes. So that's solid. I'll drink one to that.
It stays winning. So this evening on Local Love, we are going to do a best of Local Love. It'll be a Dan Votto of Art Boutique. I had a great interview with him, and if you don't mind, Councilman, could you read Downballot out for us?
I could. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, listener, for downloading the Downballot podcast on your podcatcher of choice. Thank you, viewer on Twitch, and all of our subscribers. Thank you, especially to Connor, for subscribing today. So good to see that, or at least joining our Twitch community. Thank you to the chat. Thank you for the stories you keep feeding us. Thank you for the story that was fed to us during the show tonight. And look to Local Love later on tonight and all the Echoplex Media programs. EchoplexMedia.com is your place for everything you need to know. Please make sure you get vaxxed, you get boosted, get your kids vaxxed, wear a mask when it's appropriate. And, if you need to wear pants, that's cool too. Have a great night.
Time to get the party started. Pick up my phone just to check and see who's calling. Dress up real nice for the ladies at the bar, and I'm driving in my car just to get to where they are. Here at the local scene is where I plant my feet. It's where I smoke my cigarette and I hold my drink. I look at all my friends, they're all blazing green. Here at the front of the stage waiting for MTV. Where are those guys who's standing next to me with a pipe in his hand ready to blaze for me? About 5 minutes later we're all singing Queen. I get the fuck up on stage and rock the scene, yeah. We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want, what we wanna do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. I turn and head back to the bar for a refill, man, because you know where we are. We're headed out to the car to smoke another one and another one. Now just when the magic starts kicking in, I hear relapse playing, you know it's time to head in. Alright everybody, now it's time to grab a new drink, spark it if you got it, and then pass it to me. Yeah, we do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want, what we wanna do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. Last up on the bill for the show tonight is Down and Dirty at 5, so we're headed outside to spark up another joint. Now who's got my lighter? Stoner E, of course, shouldn't you be inside?
I'm all up in this bitch, being who I gotta be. I'm fucked up like the U.S. economy. The truth is that I don't think logically. Stoner E take you on a psychedelic odyssey. Now inside motherfuckers is rocking me, and outside shit we smoke a lot of broccoli. Rocky the roller, yo, that sexy girl be jocking me. Ain't too drunk to fuck, but I'll probably do it sloppily.
We do what we want, what we wanna do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy the band, enjoy the band. We do what we want, what we wanna do, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band.
Molly say that he like jamming, and he hope he like jamming too. Well, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Yes, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Well, Bob Marley said that he like jamming, and he hope he like jamming too. Well, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Yes, I gotta say, thank you, Bob, we do. Yeah,
we do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. We do what we want, and what we wanna do, what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. We do what we want, what we wanna do, what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band. Enjoy that band. We do what we want, and what we want is to jam. So sit back and enjoy the band.
Echoplex Media streams 7 days a week on twitch.tv/EchoplexMedia. With a variety of hosts and topics, there's bound to be something you'll like. Or hate so much you can't stop watching it. Check out our full schedule at echoplexmedia.com.